Mute. Share screen. All right. Looks like folks are coming back. Okay. And here's this. And I've got a video to play later. Let me bring that up. There we go. All right. We'll get to that later. Okay. Oh, and here I'm going to want Ghostery. Let me bring that up. Tools, extensions. Ghostery. There we are. Okay. There. All right. There's Bing. Okay. Okay, so we're back on the road here. Let me just mute these guys so they don't irritate each other. All right. All right, folks, so let's carry on. So there's a lot of ways to get information. Now, companies are tracking everything you do on the web, and that's why the internet is free. Everyone gets money by invading your privacy. In retrospect, some of the people that designed the web said this was probably a mistake, and it probably would have been better if we had thought of some micropayment system. If there was some way for you to pay 1/10 of a cent for every email or something, then you'd be paying to use the internet, but we didn't build it that way. So everybody invades your privacy to put ads on your screen, and that's how everything is free. So they do it with cookies and web bugs. You already saw the cookie before from Bing. Bing put about 6 cookies on my machine just from connecting, which is very common. So a cookie is invented by Netscape called the magic cookie to overcome the stateless nature of HTTP. Originally, there was no cookie, and web pages had no way to remember who you are at all. And that's okay if you just want to put up like a website that just has like your company logo and a phone number, but it's not okay for personalized things like email, where it has to remember who I am, so I don't have to keep logging in on every page to prove who I am. And so a cookie does that. It stores a text file on your machine, which came from the server, and every time you go back to the same server, your browser sends the cookie back up so it can see who you are. This is how it remembers who's logged into Facebook and Gmail and everything. It's plain text stored on your machine. In the early days, people would do horrible things like put in your credit card number or your password in the cookie, which is not only stored in plain text, but usually sent to the web in plain text. Now most people have wised up, and they just put a long random number in the cookie, which means nothing to anybody except their server, which is better. Yeah?
So are these actually stored on the machine, like, I noticed some websites I can reboot my computer and it doesn't matter. It doesn't need
Oh yeah, it's stored on your machine, and when you set the cookie, you say how long you want it to last for. If you don't set it to have a duration, it will be forgotten when you close the browser. But most cookies set to remember for months or years, especially nowadays. They typically remember for like 5 years because people don't enjoy logging in because they're mostly on cell phones and stuff. So they put a cookie and you never have to log in again as long as that cookie is valid. That's why one thing I've done a lot at DEF CON and otherwise is steal cookies. You'll be doing it in the projects. If you steal somebody's cookie, you own them really badly. Because even if they reset their password, the old cookie will continue to work on most websites forever. There's nothing they can do but cancel the account. There is nowhere you can go on most websites to cancel the existing cookies. That's what I think the logout button should do, but on most websites, it does not do that. It is mighty strange. However, stealing someone's password is worse in another way because very few people use password managers and they reuse passwords. So if you get their password, you can usually get in their email and their bank and their Facebook and everything. So if you're reusing passwords, the most important thing you could, here's a general feature for your family and everybody about security. The most important thing you can do is update your stuff. That is more important than antivirus or anything. The next most important thing you can do is stop using the same password at different websites. Because I did this because I started doing data breach investigations. So many people steal data and dump it publicly. I was going through the breaches, and I realized how the people at the other end are just going to lose all their data. So you only need to have a different website at every password for every website. And if you have some kind of system where you take a common word and add the name of the website at the end, that's still no good either. What you have to do is use a password manager. I use LastPass. There's a bunch of them out there. There's RoboForm. Use a password manager. Get used to it. It takes a week or two to get used to it. And now I have a separate password everywhere, and I don't know any of them. They're just in my manager. This is much, much better. That is the most important thing you can do for your security. And if you don't want to use a password manager, just keep a piece of paper in your wallet with your passwords on it. That's all right. You're already used to securing paper. Put it wherever you put your $100 bills. You're in the habit of protecting that pretty well. But don't use the same password for every website, or you're just asking for it. Anyway, what's that?
To use a session instead
of well, the cookie, all websites do use sessions, and they mostly use the cookie to maintain the session. And the cookie itself is not necessarily a problem. The cookie is just the mechanism used for the session. Yes, you can make cookies expire, and you can make sessions expire, and that is typically what banking websites do. They will actually expire after 10 minutes of inactivity, but most people are not willing to put up with that much irritation for a social network, so they don't expire. Yes, it is, and it's always recommended by security people to make things expire, but usability people on the help desk always outvote them and say, that's too expensive, it's too annoying, to make people keep logging in over and over. They will go to the competition rather than keep using it. So anyway, you can view your cookies in your browser. Firefox has them down here. Internet Explorer puts them different. Each browser has a file or multiple or folder all full of your cookies. And what's inside there should just be like this, just a long random number that means nothing to anybody. That's what it should be. It is not good practice to put anything readable in there like your username or email or social security number or anything, because it's not really handled very securely. So you can, now this is what Doubleclick did. Doubleclick invented the third-party cookie, which is an act of genius. If you think big, so if I run, say, in the old days, there was like Yahoo, and Yahoo was a search engine. It was originally just a directory of the web, which first there was no way to find anything on the web. Then they invented this thing called Gopher that would hunt for things. And then Yahoo invented a web directory where it just had these topics and you could click on it and find things. And that was awesome. And then they made a search engine in Yahoo that was pretty miserable, but it was better than nothing. And so then Yahoo figured out the problem is if we put ads on the page, it's just like having ads in the newspaper. 1 million people are looking at it. If I advertise a car, 1 million people look at it, but only a tiny fraction of them actually feel like buying a car. So you're wasting most of your money showing that ad to people that don't care. It would be a whole lot better if people had to log in and I could tell what they're interested in. And I could show that ad only to people who have recently clicked on other ads for cars, so I know they're looking for a car. That would be a lot better. And so that means I have to know who people are. So the first thing they tried was to keep people on the site. So Yahoo started offering chat rooms and games and everything to try to make you stay inside Yahoo so they could keep track of you. And that's cool, but the problem is nobody could really do that. There were all these other websites that came up, and however much Yahoo tried to have fun things for you to do, there was other places to go, and so you didn't really trap them in your site for long. So Doubleclick figured out you don't really need to trap them in your site. You need to put a mark on every site that is a Doubleclick image, and they invented the web bug, or at least they were one of the first people to popularize using it. So you put an image on the page that is 1 pixel by 1 pixel, and it is transparent. So it has no effect on the page at all. All it means is that when you view the page, your browser will make an HTTP GET request to Doubleclick. And that means in the reply, Doubleclick can set a cookie. It means your browser will send the Doubleclick cookies to Doubleclick, and they can update it from Doubleclick. So if they can somehow get that bug on many pages, that even when you move from Yahoo to Microsoft to City College to everywhere, there's Doubleclick images everywhere, so the same server knows who you are everywhere you go. Even though you move from one company to another, you only intended to be talking to Yahoo, but you're actually talking to Doubleclick also without knowing it. Then you only intended to be talking to City College, but you're actually talking to Doubleclick without knowing it. They're like spying over your shoulder on everything you do without you even knowing. You never typed Doubleclick in the URL. You never intended to deal with them at all. They're the third party. You're the first party. If you go to Google, Google's the second party. And this other third party is spying on everything you do. That's how it works technically. This is what pays for the whole web. This is why Google is rich. This is where all their money comes from. They bought Doubleclick, and they improved this technology to make it much more effective and much nastier. So Google knows everything everybody is doing, and there is nothing you can do about it, practically. So if you want to see this stuff, you can put in the Ghostery privacy extension. So if I go to, say, a TV, NBC.TV, that should do. Television stations are usually about the worst. Okay, so whoa. NBC doesn't own NBC.TV? Wow, that's a trip. How about ABC? ABC.TV? Maybe Tuvalu finally changed the rules. TV is actually a country code for Tuvalu, but all these American television stations, yeah, they own ABC.TV. People don't know it stands for Tuvalu. They think it stands for television. All right, so here's ABC. So here's glorious ghostery. And let me turn off my ad blocker to make this have its full joyous effect. I do have an ad blocker running, which is another thing you should do because ads are very annoying and dangerous. But if I turn off my ad blocker, and now I'm only running ghostery, and I refresh ABC, yeah, there we go. That's what I wanted to see, 19. Okay, the number of people that is actually spying on me right now is 19. And here they are. Doubleclick is number 1, the king of it all. Net ratings, site census, add this, dialogues, X, scorecard, research, Adobe. All these people are spying on me. They're all recording that I went to abc.tv because they're all targeting ads. And you can make so much more money. By the way, I don't mean to be a downer. This is good for everyone. Suppose if you watch television back in the old days, you'd watch an hour of television, you'd see 15 minutes of commercials. All of them were for smoking, cars, beer, things I don't want. I have to waste a lot of my life watching these stupid ads for something I don't care about. If you go on the internet, they profile you. When I go to the internet, I see ads for hacking books and stuff like that. I see a small number of ads that I'm actually interested in. It's better for the customer, right? Instead of irritating me with 100 ads about something I don't care about, I see 10 ads of things I like. That's the idea. It's in an ideal world, you could say this will make the world better for you. You'll see ads that are interesting instead of being annoyed by ads you don't know about. But anyway, that's the way it is. Everybody is putting all this junk on your page. So let's see how bad City College is. Only 3 tracking cookies in City College, and that's an advertising tracker from Doubleclick because they are everywhere, a Google Translate, and a site analytics tracker. Site analytics is really important. This is how you improve the efficiency of your website. Whatever your website is, it has a purpose. Typically, you want the customer to click the buy button or something. So if 1,000 people visit your page and only 300 click the buy button, you would like to make it 400 to click the buy button. So analytics is a free service from Google that will adjust your page to make more people achieve the goal. They will automatically rearrange the elements on your page, and they will collect statistics to see who clicked the buy button, and they will rearrange it so more people click the buy button. And this will apparently increase your throughput by 10 or 20%, which is more than any advertising campaign would do, and it's free. And that is why everybody on earth puts Google Analytics cookies on their page, because it is 20% more profit for free for the minimal cost of letting Google spy on your customers. And Google is already spying on your customers 50 other ways anyway. So that's no real cost to anybody. Yeah.
So that probably we are image onto your website.
Yes.
So Google Analyze, right?
Yes. Because Google bought Doubleclick.
So you are not using Google Analyze, you remove that JavaScript.
Yes, if you don't want Google spying on your viewers, you could actually not put any of those cookies on the website. And I imagine I'm that way, at least my fake fuzz. See if I've got it on my website. What have I got on mine? I've got 2, which is one from Twitter, both from Twitter, because of these Twitter things. I'm actually one of the only people on earth that doesn't have any tracking cookies on my website from Google. But Google still knows everything because they're blocked. I'm using Chrome. So everything's going to Google. I'm using Google's DNS server. Everything's going to Google. And Google blocks, notices your IP address. You know, if you think you're hiding from Google, good luck. They are everywhere. And they are very smart. They don't just normal cookies. They found flash cookies and put them on your machine. They track your IP address. They have a whole bunch of PhDs that do nothing but think of more and more clever ways to keep track of who you are. So even if you delete your cookies, you can get rid of it. There's a product called GZapper. If you want to play the game of trying to block Google, which I do not recommend, I recommend just giving up. Don't try to stop the NSA or Google from spying on you because they will win. But if you actually think you want to stop either of them, there are people trying to do it, and GZapper is one of the products. GZapper is the tool that supposedly gets all the Google cookies off your machine. And Google has a whole bunch of geniuses thinking of more ways to hide more cookies on your machine. So good luck. But you can try it. And there's software you can use, like Snowden used, that will supposedly hide your stuff from the NSA. In both cases, the odds are strongly against you. But you can try it if you want. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just curious when you find this searches, like,
There is. Yeah, you can go to DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is not Google anyway, and they claim to be anonymous. And let's see how anonymous they are. 0 tracking cookies. Wow, that's better than my site. So DuckDuckGo, according to this test, actually lives up to their promise that they're really not tracking you, which is fine. Now, as soon as so if you search for something on DuckDuckGo, like cars, Google doesn't know what you're doing, not until you click a link. Now Google knows what you're doing again, right? Now I've got 12, 13, 14. So you know, how long can you hide from Google? You can turn off the computer and hide under your bed, and you'll be okay until you step out from under the bed, and now Google's got you again. You know, it's, you know, this is why you just haven't thought it through. Unless you're gonna live in a cave like bin Laden and never come out, Google's gonna know everything you're doing. Yeah. Well, you can use DNS as one form of ad blocking, where you block DNS requests to domains that are tracking you, and that will stop some of them. It won't stop them all. And that's how some speed up software works. The main thing, that's like ad blocking. And what it does is it helps you because it makes pages load faster, saves some bandwidth, and it blocks a lot of malware. So a lot of ads are malicious. But it doesn't stop Google from tracking you. I mean, that's just like, you know, when people buy drugs on the telephone, they use different words for drugs because they think the cops don't know. Well, the cops know. It's, you know, it does. Like you can lower the number of tracking cookies from 20 down to 10. Google still knows everything, but you stop some of it. Yeah.
I asked because I have like some DNS level blocking, and I use things like NoScript and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So whenever I get domains, I just add them to my blacklist. And then
Sure, and I did that for a while. NoScript is very powerful. It protects you. It's very annoying, but it really will prevent things from loading. If you have a slow computer or a slow internet connection, those things are useful because you don't waste a lot of time downloading junk. And it blocks some malware. They're good habits, but realistically, you can try to practice good hygiene on the computer, on the internet, and that might be nice, but don't fool yourself. You're not hiding from Google, and you're not hiding from the NSA. They know everything about everybody, and nothing you can do reasonably is going to stop them for long. I had a guy come to me in a coffee house. He found out I was teaching this class and other classes, and he said he came from Russia, and he has friends back in Russia in the KGB, or whatever GRU it is now, and they keep messing with it. He'll go on the computer, and the box will pop up commenting on what he's looking at. They'll send fake emails. They'll sneer at him. He said, what can I do? And I said, nothing. He said, that's what I thought. They have access to stuff. They can just mess with you. Hey, if you bought an Ubuntu disk, and you booted from the CD, and you viewed a website without logging into your email or anything, then they wouldn't find you. But as soon as you log into anything, they've got you again. And, you know, just be aware, you're not hiding anything from Google or the NSA. They know everything. Or to be fair, you are in a giant server with billions of other people. They don't actually know anything about you personally. You're in a huge database. And unless you do something remarkable, you're just going to be treated en masse by general software targeting ads. They have everything you've done, but they probably don't care. Should mess with you individually. All they care about is a broad targeting thing like targeting ads and stuff. And the NSA is trying, of course, to find terrorists and stuff in there, digging through all that junk. So if you did something suspicious, you might eventually rise to the radar. But most of us, we're in the database, and it's not ever going to be looked at by anybody that really wants to do anything to us directly other than target ads. This is why Microsoft had a bunch of commercials picking on Google, because they have Gmail, and the Google postman opens your mail and reads it and then gives it to you. And they totally do. Before they give you, they read your email. It's in the terms of service. They read your email, but Microsoft said, you're reading my mail. I said, I'm just skimming it, which is true. They don't read it and understand it. They skim it for keywords. And then they target ads based on the keywords. So if your email is about cars, they'll show you ads for cars. They don't really read it and understand it and know who your girlfriend is or something and mess with you. But they do scan it to target ads. And Microsoft, of course, doesn't. Microsoft actually doesn't make their money from advertising, so they really get to take what is very rare for them, the moral high ground. Microsoft can pose as being more moral than Google on this issue, and boy, they're glad of that, because Microsoft doesn't get to take that position very often. This is the thing. Google is totally spying on you, and Microsoft is totally not spying on you by comparison, because their money does not come from ads. Microsoft actually gets their money from license fees for software, and not much from ads. Anyway, it's useful to know all this stuff, but there's not much of anything you can do about it. Anyway, so that's Ghostery. You saw the joy. Last time I went to CNN, it had 52 cookies. On you go. So DNS is used to resolve alphabetic domain names into IP addresses. You cannot send any traffic to a domain name. So if I want to ping something like google.com, you'll notice it doesn't send the pings to google.com. It sends them to a number. You cannot send any traffic to an alphabetical name. The only thing the internet knows about is numbers, these IP addresses. So it didn't show it to me, but before it did that, it had to turn this name into that number. And it does that with DNS, and you can do it on a Mac or Linux with dig. So I can dig google.com, and it will now ask a server, where's google.com? I'm at the City College website, so it's going to ask our local server, which is this 172.16.2.252 on port 53. That's the City College DNS server. And it asked it, where is Google? Now, our DNS server doesn't actually know where Google is. It asks somebody else. But anyway, it found the answer and told me there's where Google is. That's it. That's DNS. All this happens unencrypted and unverified, no password. So if I had a student come to me a few years ago and said, somebody at my company is abusing the internet, doing what they're not allowed to do. How can I catch them? I'm the network administrator. I said, this is easy. Just watch DNS. Every single domain you go to, you send an unencrypted DNS request on your local network to the DNS server, which tells you your domain. So you can just put a filter in and say, who is going to the forbidden website? And you will get their IP address and the time they did it just right there. It's easy. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
I have a question about, so you say by DNS, you check where they go. But what if we type like ipconfig/DNS, isn't gonna delete everything?
No, that's if you do ipconfig/flush DNS, all that does is delete your local cache. So now you will refresh the DNS.
So then the admin will still.
Yeah, because you had to get that information somewhere, and your machine will never store the information more than a few minutes. So every time you type a domain name in any product, email or website or anything, you send a DNS request, which then resolves it. And that is sent in plain text, and anybody can snip it unless you use special software that is not commonly available to encrypt it. One thing you could do is you could use a VPN. If you run VPN software, it puts a layer of encryption on top of everything. However, there was a test last year, and 80% of commercial VPN software doesn't work. Just like remember I said about the encrypted flash drives. When you install VPN software, it typically encrypts the HTTP, but it does not encrypt the DNS traffic. It is actually not easy to make all your traffic go through the proxy. So it usually doesn't actually protect you from this threat. It does protect things like your password and the contents of your email. That goes through, but the DNS requests are going to the side and are still visible, so your boss still knows what site you were going to, if not exactly what data you sent to it. Yeah?
What if the students they set the DNS server to like 8.8 the Google DNS? So
Yes, if you do that, it's still sent without encryption. So it just goes offline. So let's do that. That's a very good point. I can use that. I can do dig. I can do dig of yahoo.com. And that will get it from my local server at 172.16, but I can also tell it to ask Google. So let's dig at 8.8.8.8. That's Google. Okay, and it asked that server, by the way, it got a different answer because that server has different data, but that is not encrypted, and you can see it in Wireshark. If I just sniff the network, which I'm now sniffing, I see all kinds of background traffic, but I can filter for DNS. Oops, I got to spell it right though. Okay, and now let's do that dig again. I've already done Yahoo, let's do MSN. Okay, so I sent it to Google. Here it goes, going to 8.8.8. This is what actually went. I sent a query saying, I want to know, here's my query, msn.com, in plain text. It went up to Google's server. This is going to 8.8.8.8. That's the destination, but it's sent in plain text. And here's the response, which is also plain text. You can see it right there, msn.com. Even if you use Google, it is sent in plain text up to Google and back. So your network, anybody at your company can still sniff it at the firewall and such. However, if you want to control what people do at your company, you should block all external DNS servers and force them to use yours, and then you can log and filter at that point. And it's a very handy way to block things. Now, one thing you can do to get around this, which every high school student knows, is you type the IP address up here instead of name. Find out the IP address for Facebook and type that up here. I don't know what it is. But if you type in the IP address directly, then it doesn't do a DNS resolution. And you can do things like view Facebook, even at a high school that blocks Facebook. So blocking DNS is a fairly weak defense. But it is an important issue of privacy. Everything you do is being broadcast in many ways all over the place. So if you're going to do anything on the internet and then lie about it, you got a problem. The best defense is to be boring, so that if people find out, it really doesn't matter. That's what I do. Anyway, yeah.
And if you're using your work computer, you have no expectation of privacy anyway.
Absolutely. If you are at work, then you have no expectation of privacy. And by the way, if you are at DEF CON, you have no expectation of safety. It says right in the program, if you use the DEF CON network, you are volunteering to be the victim of all experimental attacks. So you will not only be spied on, you will be attacked by everything. It's a free fire zone, which is great as long as you understand. But you should, and same thing's true of the hacking lab, by the way. Use those machines. It's okay to attack things. And I heard a rumor that one of my ex-students came back and put keyloggers in the machines again. So we may have the wall of sheep up there again. He did that a few years ago. He collected passwords on those machines for a while and then put them on the blackboard. So we might be doing that again. So you should be aware. Anyway, so yeah, that's the idea. Anyway, so all right, so you have a DNS server. Every company has a primary DNS server where their records are. You can find it with dig. You can dig for SOA. So if you dig at mit.edu, you will find out there's something called bitsy.mit.edu. That is the master copy of the MIT domain records. And you can do a zone transfer where you get the entire contents of the database. This used to work like a champ about 10 years ago, and then everybody figured out this is not a good idea, mostly because of Microsoft. There's a DNS security class coming in the summer and next semester you can take that goes through this. Microsoft and Apple are both horrible denizens of the internet, especially in the earlier days, and they both made horrible abuses of DNS. And Microsoft still does. Every single record in a Microsoft domain, every computer, as soon as it boots up, it puts itself in DNS with a DNS record. And a lot of companies configure their DNS unwisely with the encouragement of Microsoft, who used to make a product called Small Business Server that did this, that put everything in a public DNS server of every machine at your company. So if someone could do a zone transfer from that machine, they would get the map of the entire company, all the machines, all their names and their IP addresses, which is information they really shouldn't have. And nowadays, very few people will let you do that. But you can set it. Microsoft, you run a Microsoft DNS server, you can choose to allow zone transfers to any server or only to certain IP addresses. And of course, blocking it is a good idea, and almost everybody blocks it now. This used to be not that commonly understood, and a lot of people were just wide open, including City College. The first semester I taught this course, I taught 2 sections, like a Thursday and a Saturday. And on Thursday, I was talking about zone transfers, and they said, how about the college? So I tried it in class, and it worked. I got hundreds of records, very interesting stuff. We had servers called Hills and Fog. There were other servers called Old Hills and Old Fog. Now, that is the kind of stuff that you don't want the attacker to know about, because there's some old machine, nobody's looking at it, it hasn't been updated in years. Oh boy, I mean, that's your way in. That's the kind of stuff you don't want people to know about. And by Saturday, it was blocked. Somebody squealed. I was going to tell them, but not until I got to demonstrate it to the other class. Anyway, so then there's social engineering. This is the old trick, older than the internet. This is the most dangerous form of hacking, just tricking people into doing something stupid. This is incredibly effective. There's an attack that's really become popular in the last 3 or 4 years. You send an email to the purchasing department of a company, and you say, please send $1 million to us. Your boss said you're buying something. And a bunch of them just send the money without asking the boss. They get a lot of money this way. When I worked for the Federal Trade Commission, there was a company, a marketing company, and they had a $4 million fund, and they had a database, and their scam was they sold copier toner and paper, Xerox paper. You would order it, they would sell it at a cheap price, and it would just never arrive. And they did this for years. People just didn't have an efficient inventory system, so they would order this stuff, pay for it, it would never come, and they would just never notice. It's amazing how simple your scams can be. Kevin Mitnick is the king of social engineering. He coined the term. He did this to everybody. He was the #1 most wanted hacker in the United States in the 90s. He kept the FBI on the run. His primary skill was social engineering. His second skill was phone phreaking. He could mess with the phone network like nobody's business. So he tapped the FBI's phone. He put insulting messages on them. He routed their phone calls to go to pizza shops. He always knew when they were coming. They would show up and find an insulting sign from him. He hacked everything. He made monkeys of them. He was like 17 years old. And for a year, he ran around America as America's #1 most wanted hacker, and the FBI could not catch him. Eventually, of course, they caught him. That's why he said, you know, they talk about the phone plans. There's the Kevin Mitnick plan, $0 a minute and $0 a year, but there's a big cost at the end. They gave him 9 months of solitary because the judge believed that he could whistle into a telephone and launch nuclear weapons. Because the ignorance of the internet was so extreme that they were terrified of him. They'd never seen somebody that was a hacker that could do anything. They'd been trusting telephones and trusting computers, and he made monkeys out of them until he scared them good. That's how scared they were of him. So now he reformed and got out. He writes good books. He gives good talks. If you get a chance to see him, you should see him. But anyway, here's a video of Kevin Mitnick, and I think it'll be loud enough if I just turn up my speakers, explaining one of his social engineering tricks.
This was, I don't know, about 15 years ago. No, about 20 years ago. It was a Hollywood Central office in Los Angeles. And a friend of mine, the guy named Stephen Rhodes at the time, was also a phone phreaker. And we decided we wanted to take a self-guided tour of the central office. So it was around 2:30 in the morning.
I don't think it's loud enough. Let me try getting these speakers going. There are some speakers here. And let's see if I have power and stuff. Well, horrible mess. Here's a plug that's pulled out. I'm going to plug that in. Nothing. Well, this may be too much power. Here's the input, but I don't see how to get the power. Just a horrible mess. Perhaps they are broken. All right, I may just continue with the what volume I can get. Let me just get one slide here. See if I can figure out where this thing goes. This is why a lot of people want 802.11ad to get rid of all these wires. Especially people that clean things get very frustrated with these stupid wires everywhere. And it always ends up like this, as you probably all know. And that's what I thought. It really does end here. I wonder if this thing is turned off. That might have been just turned off. No, there's a little light. Looks like I'm supposed to just try pulling this out and see if I can get power anywhere. Aha! I've got power. Okay, now I killed the video. This is a printer. I can do without the printer. Okay. I may have accomplished the goal here. Okay, I hear sound. Ha! Life is good. Now, let's see if I can untangle this one enough to get the data in. This is an outrageous mess I got here. If I can get any distance of this thing loose of this ridiculous mess. Okay, that's beginning to go somewhere. That looks like that's not even the right one. All right. There should be an input into this mess somewhere. Aha. That's it. I think. Okay. Now that's something else. This is the input. Where does it go? Sorry about this. I should have tried it earlier. This is probably it. Okay. All right. I might be able to move my computer close enough to get one of these plugs in. This one. That's the wrong plug. That's the right plug. Good. All right. Let's see if I can get it. Wait, that's not the right plug. That's a keyboard or something. That doesn't look like it goes into that speaker. Oh, there's technology pretty bad here. Ah, here's something. So this is the input, but it goes into this horrible mess. And around here, and around there, and it goes out here. Oh, maybe it is that crazy thing. Okay. Let's see if I can get this junk working. Okay. Is there any possibility of getting this to my computer? Okay, we're going to see if I can get speakers to speak. There's power.
Just ourselves
Totally not
moving around the Hollywood CO, around on the third floor, and then all of a sudden, this big.
Okay, I'm going to restart it. It's impossible to get speakers working, which is what I expected. Okay, so we'll just have to listen to this tiny little speaker on the computer. Now I'll see if I can somehow get the projector working again. I should have brought down my own speakers, but they hijacked them for a competition. That's why. Now, oh, I unplugged some garbage here. Okay, there. That's not the speakers. That must be the speakers. Okay, that's the speakers that don't work. Let's put this back. Let's see if I figure out right. This one. Okay, lights seem to be on. Okay. Now, let me see if I can get any projection working. Aha! Okay. Good. We'll carry on.
20 years ago, it was a Hollywood Central office in Los Angeles. And a friend of mine, the guy named Stephen Rhodes at the time was also a phone freaker, and we decided we wanted to take a self-guided tour of the central office. So it was around 2:30 in the morning on Saturday, and we had door codes to all the different offices in Los Angeles, and we just let ourselves in. We were roaming around the Hollywood CO, and we're out on the 3rd floor, and then all of a sudden, this big guy, security guard, approaches us and goes, "Excuse me, yeah, do you have any ID?" And I go, "Sure, no problem." And I go to my pocket and say, "Oh, I must have left my ID in the car. I'll go get it. I'll be right back." He goes, "No." He goes, "Who's this guy?" And I go, "Well, he's just a friend of mine. And I'm going to take him on a tour." He said, "We're seeing the central office." He goes, "At 2:30 in the morning?" I said, "Yeah, we just got out of the movie, and my friend has always wanted to work with the phone company. And so I figured I'd just take him on a quick tour." And he goes, "Well, where do you work?" I said, "Well, I work in the Cosmos Center at San Diego." This was your supervisor. And I told him the name of the supervisor. Incidentally, was the correct name of the person in the San Diego Cosmos Center. He goes, "No, you have to come. You guys have to come with us." So he escorts us to the elevator. And I know on the 9th floor is the switching control center. And that's where there's people here because that office is made. So you end up getting escorted up to the 9th floor. And there's about 5 or 6 people around. And the security guards telling the story. I found these 2 guys roaming around our building. This guy doesn't have ID. Let's find out what's going on. So one of the other supervisors, not a security guard, he goes, "What's your supervisor's name?" And I gave it to him. I said, "Well, listen, we can't make her up. Because look, it's 2:30 in the morning. If you want, I'll go to my car, we'll go get my ID, and I'll be right back." Of course, I had no plans of coming back. So he says, "No, we're calling your supervisor." So he picks up a book, some sort of intercompany directory, and I'm thinking, well, they don't list phone and telephone numbers in there. But apparently he had found some sort of notes or whatever listing the supervisor so in front of him. He calls the supervisor, 2:30 in the morning, Saturday. He goes, "Listen, I found one of your employees, Steve, roaming around in our offices, and he says he works for you." "Uh-huh. Oh, you want to talk to him?" "Sure." So he gets me the phone, and I go, "Hey, Sally, how are you? I'm really sorry that you were woken up. And I normally would never take a friend on the tour of the central office." And she's, as I'm speaking, she's saying, "Who are you? Who are you?" And I go, "Yeah, and by the way, Tuesday, we'll definitely, we still have that meeting for that report, correct?" And she goes, "Who are you? Who are you?" But she's pressing the phone to my ear. So the other people in the room can't hear what she's saying. He's all listening, I said the conversation. He And like having a calm conversation with her, and I said, listen, okay, you know, I'm just gonna take my friend around for about 15 more minutes and we'll leave and I'll see you on Tuesday. And I went over and I walked about, well, it was like about 2 steps, and I hung up the phone. And I go, are you satisfied?
All right. Well, that's what I wanted to see. And the point is, notice his research. He did that because he knew enough to realistically appear to be a telephone employee. And the research is what makes you effective. Anyway, I think we got some more slides somewhere. Okay, so HB Gary was a company that got hacked entirely through social engineering. Back in 2011 and 2012, there was Anonymous, LulzSec, and Anti-Sec were hacktivist groups that decided to make some kind of political statements by hacking everybody. And HB Gary writes rootkits for the federal government. And they write very good rootkits, and they're very good at it, but they made a branch company called HP Gary Federal that was new, intending to provide further security and espionage services for the US government. And in order to advertise it, the CEO announced that he had figured out who was in Anonymous. And he had done this, he had a technical staff programming stuff, and they were watching Twitter and IRC and Facebook and all these social media, and they were trying to correlate. When somebody puts a note on Pastebin saying, I just hacked somebody, who immediately retweets that link? And who do they talk to? And who are their friends? And that way we can find out who's in the gang. And his technical staff was warning him, this is not working very well, the results are not very reliable. But he sold it to the government saying he totally found everybody in Anonymous. So to get even with him, Anonymous decided to hack him. Now Anonymous was actually a small group of 40 and 50-year-old hackers who knew some technical things and an enormous bunch of teenagers that they used as disposable weapons to throw them at someone and get them jailed. It was pretty awful, and I was pretty much opposed to it. But anyway, they weren't very technical, and so they got in. They found a SQL injection in their network. They used it to take over the email server, and then they sent emails from the internal email server that appeared to come from Greg Hoagland, the CEO, saying, I'm in Europe and I need to SSH. Will you open a port? Will you tell me to change the firewall? I found the old password somewhere, just reset my password. So he was in. That's how he got in. He didn't exploit a vulnerability other than the original SQL injection. Now they just opened the firewall and gave him a password. So now that he had root, he then stole all the data, published it openly, wiped out all their servers, destroyed everything, and totally destroyed the company. And that was the end of it. That guy went into hiding. They paid $6,000 for an RSA booth, and they didn't even show up. They just put a sign saying we're afraid to show up because of the threats on their life, because they were doing a lot of stuff that was unpopular at the time. Anyway, so these are techniques. You persuade people to do things by getting some kind of power over them. So this is the main threat to your network is people. Talking to people into doing a stupid thing is far more effective than finding a hidden password or something. So social engineers have done this since the dawn of time. They do it by noticing personality types. You notice if someone is insecure, then you can control them. You find out if they have some kind of dirty secret, like a sexual scandal or a drug addiction. Now you can totally control them by threatening them with that. There's many techniques. You convince them that there's some kind of emergency. This is urgent. So you can ignore normal protocols. You give them something for nothing. One thing people like to do is put a virus on their machine, then show up, claim to be from tech support, and tell them you'll remove the virus, but you have to like get their password to do it. That's for to give them something inherently of value. Convince them that everybody else is already doing this, or I'm going to get fired and I need a break. These are all the tricks. Now the problem is these exploit the fact that we are a social animal. People want to be kind to others. They identify instinctively who is authoritative, and they like to obey the authority figure. They have some desire to help other people and to be nice to people. And how much do you really want them not to be like that? Do you want a bunch of psychopaths working for you? It would be better for security in some ways. So anyway, you have to have rules where you never tell anybody anything without verifying who they are first. You need everybody at your company to be nasty and suspicious. Here's the social engineering template where you just record everything about a person. I saw this in the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker online ministry. Jim and Tammy Faye Baker online ministry was a bunch of crooks, and they lied to people to get money from them. And I was the guy that eventually refunded the money to victims years later by going through their database. And they had a template like that of all the lies they told them last time, what lies to tell them next time, when to call them back, and they would just tell you anything. They said they were building veterans hospitals, hospitals for dogs, charities for homeless people, water plants, sewage plants, farms, anything you want, they were doing that and giving you money. And they were remembering to call you 6 months from now and tell you that we finished the first sewage plant and we're building another, or whatever it is that they tricked you with. So now then DEF CON decided to make this scientific, and a few years ago they had the social engineering contest. And this I thought was very impressive. I don't know if the world has changed since I was a young man, but when I was a kid, there was this mating ritual among humans that worked like this. Women would go out on a date with a man and smile and be quiet, and the man would now brag and tell the woman how great he is, and she would smile while realizing this guy's a complete idiot. Everything he's telling me is a lie. And they practiced this ritual on both sides, so the men will say anything, especially to a pretty woman, and the women will detect lies. And that's what happened at DEF CON. 135 companies, they had a contest where they put you in a booth and you could hear the conversation. They say, call this company and get the person who answers the phone to tell you what browser they're using, what version it is, and then go to a website you chose, because that's enough to take over the machine. They did not actually do that, but they wanted to show that you can talk them into that. And they were able to talk every man into that and none of the women. Because the women that answered the phone just had somewhere gained this suspicious attitude that maybe this guy's lying to me. And the men just wanted to brag about how smart they were, and it never occurred to them that someone was lying to them. This is why we need more women in security. Men have systematic defects. It is not right that we are protected by primarily men, because, and our enemies are not stupid. They send women to seduce the men, and you get these, well, that Anna Chapman was the Russian spy. It's not just a cliche in the Bullwinkle cartoons. They really send beautiful Russian spies to seduce the men, and the men are complete idiots and tell them everything. It's still going on. And if half of our staff are women, we'd at least have more diversification in the process. Anyway, so I think it would help if someone were gay too. I think the more diversity we have, the more likely that some of these attacks will fail more often. If we all have the same shared weakness, this is unwise. But of course, right now we have a president who is determined to sell us out to the Russians and lie about it totally. So in the meantime, there will be no defense against them, but there will come some time when he is gone and we return to some strategy of actually defending the country instead of selling it out. Anyway, so the shoulder surfing is another one. You can just watch what people type. I've seen students do it to me and get my password. You can use binoculars. You can put a camera on. There's these SIMs. Brian Krebs has a bunch. You can put a fake plastic shell on top of an ATM that has a fake keyboard so it catches the key presses and a mag stripe, and it has a camera to record the key presses. The only way to prevent this is to not let people stand near you while you're typing and pull and yank on the ATM to make sure it's really the ATM and not some fake shell on top of it. People used to do a lot of dumpster diving. You'd find stolen manuals in the trash or old manuals and find information and old list of passwords on Post-it notes and such. This is pretty much over. It's now replaced by Facebook. Everybody puts their secrets on Facebook for the whole world to see. You don't need to get dirty in the trash anymore to find out everything about everybody. They will just voluntarily put it on Facebook. So you have to warn your people, you shred the trash, lock the trash bins, clean off your old equipment when you discard it because your old computers have leftover data on them. There was a study about 4 years ago where if you go to San Francisco airport, people leave laptops in the airport and on the plane all the time, so much that they have 50,000 abandoned laptops per year, and they just stack them on a pallet and auction them off. You can just buy a cubic 10 feet of laptops for some pound of money, and they tried 99% of them, of course, are all full of unencrypted corporate data. Just like all the thumb drives, it's happening. What you should be is encrypting everything, and that's gradually coming, but it hasn't become universal yet. Yeah.
That's also a problem with copy machines.
Right.
Machines and printers.
Yeah, that was a big scandal about 5 years ago when it hit that a lot of copy machines and printers have a hard drive, and they have copies of data on there too. So, and a lot of them do not have any way to erase it. So, yeah, these are all issues. This is data remnants, a big issue. You have leftover data on things. Then you can follow people into secured areas by just walking behind them as they open the door, let two people go through. The cure for this is turnstiles or better man traps, where you have to go in a room and then a guard looks at you before you go in the next room. And if there's something fishy, they won't open the next door and you're trapped in there, then they just call the cops. But that's expensive. So turnstiles are the simple one. You just go to BART and you'll see how well that works. Everybody just jumps over the turnstile and gets on the trains for free. So phishing is sending people a message and hoping they will click on a link, of course. It's extremely effective. It will work against almost anybody. I think that's how they got the 2 batches of nude celebrities that hit the news in the last few years. They would just send them phishing links and then get in their iCloud or some other cloud-based personal image repository. There's something an enormous number of Americans do. They put something on the internet, but they don't want everyone to see it. Don't do that. That is a fundamentally illogical attitude to take. But anyway, a lot of people do. And then they trust somebody like Facebook, who keeps on changing the rules. How secure are the password managers? Oh, that's a very good question. Password managers themselves do get hacked. They are a single point of attack and such. But so you could argue about which one is safer. I used one that got hacked, but they supposedly patched it. But my main thing is if you don't use a password manager, you use the same password everywhere, and that's really bad. But yes, you're right. The password manager itself can be attacked, and that is an issue. And they're not any better than any other kind of software. They have a variety of weaknesses and a steady chain of vulnerability reports and patches. So it is certainly true. It is possible that by using a password manager, someone would hack that. There is no perfect security anywhere. You have to do threat modeling. You have to figure out what you're worried about and try to make an intelligent decision. What's the correct risk profile for you? I like a password manager. I'm pleased to take that risk. I think that is the lower risk, but it's a decision you have to make for yourself. If you had like 10 character or 20 character random passwords and you wrote them down on a piece of paper and you constantly typed them in everywhere, you'd probably be safer, but I'm not willing to go do all that hassle. You have to choose your own balance of convenience versus security. I don't have any secrets though. I got no corporate secrets, no military secrets, no nothing. All I got is grades, and those are encrypted. So I can take a pretty laissez-faire attitude. If I had a bunch of confidential corporate documents on this machine, I'd have to be a lot more careful with it. Anyway, I'll wait another few seconds. All right. So which one is a tiny image? Okay, that's a web bug. Good. Which one will find all the computers at a company? Yeah, that's a zone transfer. It gives you all the DNS entries. And for Microsoft machines, that will give you all the machines. Which one refers to sending emails with malicious links? Okay, that's phishing. Good. All right. Which process is now replaced by Facebook? All right, that's dumpster diving. I do occasionally run into perverts. They're still putting data on paper, but it's pretty much over. Anyway, all right. Which technique is an exchange of values? Okay, that's quid pro quo, this for that. Okay, so it is Eli W. is in here twice, Bob, and Louise. All right, I'm gonna clear out and stop the Zoom and move out of the way so they can have the Hackers Club. And after they get going, I'll take a look upstairs and see if somebody needs help. And I'll be back here at 1 for the afternoon class, and then I'll go up to the lab after that again.